Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. We're going to be taking a look at Serum 2 once again. A couple of new little features in Serum 2, particularly pertaining to the phase of the oscillators, which we're going to take a look at. I came across this randomly, and I think it's a pretty cool little feature that you can use, particularly when it comes to kind of working with sort of bass sounds where you want things to be uber tight when it comes to the phase of these oscillators. There's a couple of other things that we're going to take a look at as well, pertaining to the Unison section as well. So let's dive straight in and check this out. Right, I'm just kicking things off with an initialized patch here. We're going to dive straight in and start working on something. Now, when it comes to kind of doing these kind of basslines that I want to take a look at here, it kind of starts off with the fundamentals of what I used to do with working on trance basslines. Because it's such a sort of machine gun style pattern at a high speed, the phase is really important, and making sure that everything is tight. One of the most important things is the start times of the phase that you have here. So by default, this is the old way of doing things. You would, let's first just dial in a filter here so we can see what we're doing. We'll assign an envelope. And while we're busy with the envelopes, this is a really cool new feature as well, that they are syncable to BPM now, which lets you get some really, really tight envelopes. I still get some clicks with the fast setting over here, so what I do sometimes just set that to 1024. Which is more than tight enough most of the time. It will turn down the sustain, and then you can set this to whatever you want. So you can have a 16th note locked in for the filter. Let's bring this down an octave. You can see now, when I start messing around with that, the sort of like transient of that bassline sound is kind of all over the place now. We'll bring in this one as well. We'll set that to 1024 again. Hold. We'll set this to 16th as well. There we go. Sustain down once again. We can leave a little bit of release too. Doesn't have to be too much. We can leave like a 16th note release. Let's just set that to lock in place again, and then we'll just pull this all the way up. So that's our amplifier curve now, our amp envelope. So we can also go and turn on the ARP here and listen carefully to that transient. So it's kind of all over the place now. So the way that you'd normally fix that is to turn down the random phase start. That's better. And now you could also tweak the start point of the phase as well to 0. That sounds better in this case, I think. And let's just bump up the BPM quickly for this. So just going to try one of the different filters here too. And that's a pretty good starting point. Right, so that's all great for this kind of mono element here, but let's say, for instance, we wanted to bring in something that's a little bit more stereo. There's a couple of ways that you could do this, but let's enable oscillator 2, and we'll set that to the same pitch again. Now, there's various different ways that you can go about this, and they're going to vary from patch to patch, but let's set this up to 4 Unison so we get kind of a bit of a spread going on here. That sounds cool, and we can send that through to the same filter as well. Maybe even send that to its own filter, seeing as we have 2 now, so you can kind of get different settings for your different oscillators here. We can use the same envelope. That's cool. We do have a random phase for this though, and you're going to need that in most cases, because if we turn this down for now, for this example, and we'll set this to the same thing, we want that phase to be resetting and to be a little bit tight. You kind of get this bunching up at the beginning of the sound. You're removing all the stereo content there now. What's happening is these are detuned, but because they're starting at the same phase position, it takes them a second to start, separating from each other, because the lower voices will be detuned slightly down, the higher ones will be detuned slightly up again, but it takes them time to get there. The ways that you could get around this is maybe opening up the Unison section here. You could vary the waveform slightly. So if you were to say, let's maybe just add in a bend, you can add a slight warp to each voice that's being duplicated. Maybe the wavetable position as well. It slowly starts varying them up a little bit so that they kind of start splitting away from each other at that beginning, but it's not really what we want. Same goes for the stack. You could change the stack to maybe add an octave up. It's better now because now we've got half of the voices kind of up and some of them down, which means there's a difference even though the phase is starting at the same place. But there's a new way that you can deal with this now as well, which I didn't know about, and I stumbled across this the other day, that you can set these to 0 and to random. We'll set this back off again, and we can open up this little drop down that we have here. Just take off that warp there. If you hit this little drop down, you'll see you've got all voices, which is the usual way of doing things. This sometimes gets overridden when you are working in mono legato. It's supposed to sort of follow how a analog style synth would, mono synth would work. So it doesn't always reset the phase. So if you're in contiguous mode there, of course, this will just give you the same effect as the randomness that we had before, but you now have this per voice setting for the phase of this oscillator. If you click that on and hit this little pencil tool here, you see now what we had before was this, with everything kind of being crammed into the beginning there. We actually have control over the phase of every single note that's being duplicated, or every single voice that's been duplicated inside of that unison mode now. We can actually play around with where they start and stagger them a little bit. And it's super tight now. It's still not quite as organic or quite as wide as this contiguous mode. But if you are wanting this to be that same sort of very tight kind of trigger feel that it has, that one is going to be the most control that you have over where the phase positions start there. And you could kind of tune this to find where it's going to make the most sense. And that works pretty well. Now, the other thing here that you can do as well, and this has been able to do this before with Serum 2 as well, the original Serum, when you're working with this kind of stereo content and a bass sound like this, it's actually does work in your favor sometimes to actually just remove some of the bass content, because we can control this around, but you still have some duplication of voices on each other at that sort of low fundamental that we have here. We can maintain this one. And did you notice that now as well? You could hear that the phase was jumping around because I had this set to all voices, even though this is random and 0 phase or 0 degrees phase. You can hear it just kind of moving around. That's because of this mono mode that we have here. So it doesn't reset it correctly if you're in mono mode with legato turned on. So in that case, you want to come down to this per voice. Even though we have one, you want to set that up there. But like I said, we've got this kind of anchoring the sound now. We could just go to this wavetable and decide, rather than duplicating, because we actually have the same wave and everything, we're just treating this as a stereo element and that as a sort of mono anchor. This one we could actually just go into the wavetable itself and remove the fundamental entirely, just by editing the wavetable, coming down to this fundamental frequency that we have and taking that out completely. And now you've actually still got that tight sort of unison feel on the top, although not quite as loose as the random mode, but it's there for you if you need that. And now also, if we take off the original saw, It's kind of like we've applied a high pass filter to that. You could actually probably do that with the filter now because you do have a high pass filter in the warp tab here. But I think this is a more surgical way to do that. Cool. It's a little bit lifeless, but in some cases that is what you're aiming for, and having this on hand is pretty cool. One last way that we could look at this as well. I'm not going to save this one. It's pretty simple to set up. Let's just initialize this one last time. And you could do a similar thing with just having the fundamental being a sine wave. And then rather utilizing, so you've got that sort of mono sine underneath. Once again, we can go to per voice. So we've got control over the phase. And this one, I just leave that loose as it is. And let's just dial up the unison. The other cool thing here is that you can actually just send the oscillator or the sub, if you want, just as a direct source to the output as well. If you come up the top here, you can just send this direct. So this actually doesn't pass through the filters or effects at all. It'll just stay a pure sine, and you can then work on the stereo, the sort of more harmonically rich elements without actually affecting that sine wave at all. Another great way to kind of work on these stereo bass sounds like that. Cool. So I hope you guys learned something new there. I'll catch you guys again soon. If you want, go check out the Patreon page. I'll leave a link in the description. There's a bunch of presets and more goodies in there, music, all sorts of stuff. So pop by there. You can join for free and you'll get these videos usually ahead of time as well. Otherwise, drop a like, subscribe, leave a message in the comments if there's stuff that you want to see specifically. I'm always happy to take a few suggestions from you guys and see if I can cover something like that and help you guys out. Right, I'll see you soon. Take care.